A dip in student enrollment at the University of Nairobi has seen the university more than double the fee for postgraduate courses and parallel degrees. This coming on the back of a proposal that was unanimously supported by university bosses to have the tuition fee that has not been reviewed since 1991 tripled to factor in the dwindling numbers crossing to university from the high schools in the country. Now, students looking to study for master's course like communication and MBA will have to pay more than 600,000 shillings for a 2-year program from an average of 275,000, reflecting an increase in 118% with the degree courses like commerce, economics and law under the parallel plan that have been increased by up to 70% to about 1 million shillings for the 4 years. Now, the university is betting that the review will lift revenues from fee, which have been dropped in past years, and pushed Kenya's leading public university to a 1.4 billion loss in the year ended June 2018. The National Bureau of Statistics data shows that the enrollment declined from 98,715 in 2016 to 62,963 in 2020, reflecting a drop of 36.2% or 35,752 students. Good. Let's look therefore at that budget that has been extended to university education in the country. You're going to say that, well, it has been a dropping because we have it at 94.9 billion in the financial year 2020-2021. We did know that they actually did have a lesser figure again in 2021-2022. Now let's look at that high school enrollment as well. So we will talk about exactly how it has been going on. You see that trend there is that despite majority of those students therefore getting heavily enrolled into high schools, majority of them again are not crossing to universities because they are not attaining that minimum grade that would actually see them cross to university, which is driven these public universities into a cash crunch. Mr. Wahome Ngari, raise university fee. That's the only way out of them, because University of Nairobi is again saying that they have a 7.2 billion debt to the Kenya Revenue Authority this morning.
Let's start here. For us to be a middle-income economy,
yes,
we must ensure more than a quarter of our population have post-secondary education.
Yes.
Education that gives them 3 things: knowledge, the ability to gather information and use it; skills, using that information; and 3, the aptitude, that even if you don't get hired, you look for a way to create a job. So we're looking to moving a quarter of this population. That's only how Vision 2030 will be a reality. Now, there seems to be a serious problem here, that the university have not reviewed their fees from 1991. If you stop there just for a moment, what has remained constant from 1991? Because that's where the failure is. They've been paying more for everything.
Yes.
They've been increasing salaries. They have been paying more for stationery. They've been paying more for everything. I don't know how that happened, that fees were frozen for that long. Now the realization is they cannot get enough funding from the national government. They are not attracting enough students, and they have commitments to honor. So they must look for where the money is going to come from. But raising 2 or 3 times without giving the payer a way of dealing with that is going to be very problematic.
Pretty much. Mr. Wahome Ngari, I'm going to come back to you. Let me bring in a Sid this morning. Sid, is this latest review by the University of Nairobi just smelling of the IMF reforms that they wanted to be pushed into the leading public institutions in the country?
Thanks, Simba. It may be, it may not be, but as Mr. Wahome has correctly repeated, 1991 was the last review date.
Yes.
That's 30 years, Simba. I'm not 30. A lot has changed in 30 years. So, I mean, that's something that went wrong along the way.
Yes.
We don't know why.
Sid, can I cut you short and then say, well, if Mr. Wahome is saying that we need to ensure that majority of those who transition from secondary schools into this country actually get post-secondary school education, then you freezing that fee since 1991 up to now would help you realize that objective.
Not really, because one, your quality of education drops because you do not have enough financial resources to actually, adequately capacitate these institutions.
Yes, then Sid, why don't you continually increase funding to these public institutions?
Look, Simba, I'm not totally for the price one.
Yes.
I mean, it should come with a basket of reforms.
Yes.
Not only a price hike. We know government has snatched higher education funding in February of 2021. They did that the previous year as well. But we need to develop, government at one point were in the right track to get us away. All of us are not built to go to university. We need to implement, TVET. We need to implement a curriculum that accommodates everyone. We can't have a situation where our universities churn out doctors, accountants. We need plumbers. We need craftsmen. We need all these other people to fill in the gap in the economy. And that's the direction government was taking. But this should have been done way earlier. It should have been done in the 90s. To implement a curriculum that is, based on your competencies and your skills.
Yes.
And the government is moving in the right direction. Another concept that would be correct to raise is a one-size-fits-all raise in tuition fees, fails to take into account the cost differentials of the various degrees offered by these universities. I know a state-sponsored have a flat rate that they pay, but the cost of a medical student or an engineering student will be way higher. The cost of getting that person educated will be way higher than getting somebody in the humanities, social sciences, businesses, schools. So we need to reflect these differences in the structure. I think an increase in price, increase in tuition fees was mandated, but it should come with a basket of reform. And it should also ensure a clear commitment from government to increase these university funding levels to probably what they were previously, so that we have institutions that are financially capacitated to do the right, find the right quality education candidates.
Mr. Wahome, then what is the way out for the country? Have we made a mistake to allow IMF to come in and tell us how to run? And let me rephrase my question. The basic needs that we identify as a country, education stands tall among those. Then should have we renegotiated and said, probably you can touch other areas, but not the way in which we run our public institutions, or even these reforms that we're talking about were actually needed in this public university education space?
Not sure, but I still remember IMF was strong in town in 1991.
Yes.
I think when they went away, we seem to have forgotten what the discussion was with them. But I don't know, now they're back in town and they have a voice.
Yes.
But we have progressively, we have a route path, we have a vision to achieve, and we have identified education is important, and the cost of education is going up. Just to put numbers on the table, at the moment for the regular program, government pays, I think, about 70,000 shillings for every student in the public university.
Yes.
And the student or their benefactor is just allowed to pay something slightly below 30,000 per annum. Now that looks cheaper than what people pay in the kindergarten. And you see now, that's why it doesn't work. Because we need more resources.
Shouldn't it be that way though? Because you like to think that that's the most critical part of transitioning the students into the economy.
Let's look at the cost of providing the education.
Yes.
What's more expensive? Is it at the kindergarten level or is it actually at the university level? So we need more resources at the university.
Yes.
And so when we got stuck at that number, now we started compromising many other things, and now we are caught up. So we must get out of where we are caught up.
Yes.
And we've done a few things and we've done them right. In the years gone by, if you were admitted at the university, it was the business of the university to provide accommodation. Now we got into a point where it's not the business of the university. We have left that to the private sector, and we do not have our students sleeping outside. We have enough provision for that. We need to focus on university funding and look at what are the other possible alternatives. We have HELP, but HELP is giving so minimal an amount that cannot help us here. We must be able to look for a model that makes it possible for people to have reasonable funding by government.
Yes.
Or if you're going not to get funding from the government, there will be applicable sources where you can be able to do your funding. Yeah.
All right. Sid, in 1 minute, please, if you may, let's clear this conversation. So, I mean, for example, Sid, you were just paying something shy of 300,000 for your MBA in communication. Now, the university is telling you got to pay 600,000. If you're in a medical course, the university is telling you got to pay 3.8 million for a 5-year course, upwards from down from around 1.7 million. I mean, so what if they don't get this money?
That's a tough question. I mean,
It is, Sid. Is that not what students are now and parents are now faced with?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's no clear specification of any concrete financial aid program, you know, for vulnerable students.
Yes.
And the free proposal will only make a bad situation already worse. So, I mean, that's a tough question to answer. But it's something that needs to be done. You know, the costs of educating people have gone up. Mr. Wahongi has correctly pointed out, you can't have a situation where university education is turning out to be cheaper than, you know, kindergarten or primary school. It's normally the opposite. And even if you look at the, you know, our fee structures as they stand without the lines, we are probably one of the, not one of, but we are amongst the nations that have one of the lowest costs of higher education compared to anywhere else in the continent. So, if you look at it from that perspective, I mean, it's time for reform. It's time for everyone to adapt to change, and also, you know, onto the competence-based curriculum, whereby in such colleges or institutions, fees may not be the same. You're not probably going to have to pay 5 million for, I mean, 3.something million for 5-year program. But, you know, this involves a lot of cost. All these programs involve a lot of cost. So, I mean, yeah, there needs to be more clear specification, and government needs to also commit more to fund these universities and have clear, concrete financial aid programs for these vulnerable students.
Pretty much. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this morning for this conversation. Now, what we do know is that some unions have rushed to court to make sure that not 3.8 million shillings we mentioned here this morning for the medicine students at the University of Nairobi will not be actualized. And we're waiting for that hearing on the July of 19th. And we shall be keeping a tabs on that story and report it to you when and how we have it here at Metropole Television. Good morning. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiage.